You will keep that thing hidden. Do you understand me?" The elder's voice had been sharp, his fingers gripping Kira's thin shoulder hard enough to bruise. She had been 7 years old, standing in the cold storage room where she slept, the horn wrapped in its iron chains, sitting on the rickety table between them. "Whatever your mother was, whatever she brought into this pack, it died with her. You are nothing. You have nothing. And if you value your life, you will never let anyone see what is." In that box, Kira had nodded, tears streaming down her face, and she had kept that promise for 15 years. The horn stayed locked in an old wooden chest beneath her bed, wrapped in cloth and chains, silent and cold. She never touched it directly. The iron burned her skin in a way that made no sense, leaving red welts that took days to heal. So she left it alone, buried under spare blankets and the few possessions she owned, and tried to forget it existed. But forgetting was impossible when the horn called to her in dreams, when she woke gasping with the sensation of ancient voices whispering her name, when her reflection in the kitchen's polished copper pots showed eyes that sometimes flashed gold before returning to their usual dull brown. She had learned to be invisible. In the Silver Moon pack, that was the only way to survive when you had no family, no status, no wolf strong enough to defend you. Kira worked in the kitchens from before dawn until long after dark, her hands raw from scrubbing pots and her back aching from carrying heavy sacks of grain. She slept in a room barely larger than a closet, ate the scraps left over after everyone else had been fed, and spoke only when spoken to. The other Omegas pitied her. The higher-ranking wolves did not even see her, and that was exactly how she needed it to be. Because invisibility meant safety. It meant no one asked questions about her mother, about why she had appeared at the pack borders pregnant, and alone 22 years ago, or why she had vanished into the forest when Kira was 3 and never returned. It meant no one wondered why Kira had never shifted, why her wolf remained locked somewhere deep inside her, silent and unreachable, no matter how hard she tried to call it forth. The annual trials changed everything. Kira had heard about them, of course. Every pack in the kingdom talked about the trials, the week-long event where Alpha King Thorn Blackwood visited different territories to observe. Competitions, settle disputes, and remind everyone exactly who held the ultimate power. This year, the trials were coming to Silver Moon, and the entire pack had been in chaos for weeks preparing. The main hall had been cleaned until it gleamed, the guest quarters refurbished, the training grounds expanded. Alpha Marcus, Silver Moon's leader, had been insufferable, barking orders and demanding perfection. His daughter Vivienne had been even worse, preening and practicing her seduction techniques. Convinced that this was her opportunity to catch the king's attention and become queen, Kira had watched the preparations from her usual position in the shadows, grateful that servants were beneath notice during important events. She would serve the food, clear the plates, and fade into the background. Simple, safe, forgettable. The night the Alpha King arrived, Kira was in the kitchen coating roasted pheasants with honey glaze when she felt it. A pull, deep in her chest, like a hook had caught. Behind her ribs, and someone was drawing the line taut. She gasped, nearly dropping the basting brush, her hand flying to her sternum. "Are you ill?" One of the other kitchen workers, an older Omega named Petra, looked at her with concern. "You have gone pale." Kira shook her head, unable to form words. The pull intensified, a thrumming vibration that seemed to resonate in her bones. And beneath it, impossibly, she heard the horn. Not with her ears. Somewhere deeper. A low, mournful note that sang of ancient forests and silver moonlight, and blood spilled on sacred ground. "I am fine," she managed, though her voice sounded strange even to her own ears. Just tired. But she was not fine. Something had changed. Something had woken up. She was carrying a platter of venison through the crowded main hall when it happened. The hall was packed with wolves from Silvermoon and the visiting delegations, the air thick with the scent of roasted meat, wine, and the musk of powerful shifters in close quarters. At the head table, Alpha King Thorn Blackwood sat in the place of honor, and even from across the room, Kira could feel the weight of his presence. He was massive, broad-shouldered, and radiating an authority that made even Alpha Marcus look diminished. His dark hair was pulled back, revealing a face that was all hard angles and contained violence, and his eyes were the molten gold of a wolf on the hunt. Kira had been careful not to look directly at him. Kings did not notice. Servants. That was a fundamental truth of her existence. But as she wove through the tables, keeping her head down and her steps quiet, the Alpha King stopped mid-sentence. His entire body went rigid, his head turning with predatory precision toward where she stood, frozen between the beta table and the musician's corner. The hall did not fall silent. Conversations continued. Laughter rang out. Someone called for more wine. But Kira felt the world narrow to the space between her and the golden. Eyes now locked on her face. Thorn Blackwood stood, the movement fluid and controlled, and the wolves nearest him finally noticed, their voices trailing off into confused murmurs. You. His voice cut through the noise like a blade, deep and commanding and impossibly focused on her. Kira's hands shook, the platter wobbling. She could not speak, could not move, could barely breathe. Come here. It was not a request. Every instinct screamed at her to run, but her feet carried her forward as if pulled by invisible strings. The crowd parted, wolves stepping back to create a path, and Kira walked it on trembling legs until she stood at the base of the raised platform where the head table sat. Up close, the Alpha King was even more overwhelming. He towered over her, his presence a physical force that pressed against her skin, and the gold of his eyes seemed to see straight through her carefully constructed invisibility. What is your name? The question was quiet, but it carried the weight of absolute authority. Kira. Her voice came out as barely a whisper. Kira Ashwood, Your Majesty. Something flickered across his face. Surprise, perhaps, or recognition. His nostrils flared slightly, and she realized he was scenting her, reading her in the way wolves did. What he found there made his jaw tighten. How long have you been with Silvermoon? Alpha Marcus had risen from his seat, his expression caught between confusion and alarm. Your Majesty, she is just a kitchen worker. An orphan. Surely there is no need to concern yourself with such trivial matters during the feast. Thorn did not look at Marcus. His gaze remained fixed on Kira, intense and searching. I asked her a question, Marcus, not you. The rebuke was mild, but Alpha Marcus flinched as if struck. 22 years, Your Majesty. Kira answered, her throat dry. I have been here my entire life. And your parents? Now his eyes narrowed, his head tilting slightly as if listening to something only he could hear. Your family? I have none. The lie came automatically, practiced and smooth. My mother left me here as an infant. I do not know who my father was. Thorn stepped down from the platform, closing the distance between them until Kira had to tilt her head back to maintain eye contact. This close, she could smell him, cedar and smoke, and something wild that made her skin prickle with awareness. You are lying. The words were soft, almost gentle, but they struck like a blow. Heart hammered against her ribs. I am not, Your Majesty. I swear it. His hand rose, and she thought for a terrifying moment that he would touch her. But he stopped with his fingers hovering near her face. Do you hear it? He asked, and there was something almost vulnerable in the question. The calling? Kira's breath caught. She did hear it. The horn, singing its ancient song somewhere in the distance. And beneath it, a response rising from deep within her chest where her wolf had always been silent. I do not know what you mean. Thorn's expression hardened, the vulnerability vanishing behind a mask of royal authority. He turned to Alpha Marcus, who stood watching the exchange with barely concealed panic. "This woman will be moved to the guest quarters immediately. She is under my personal protection for the duration of my stay." The hall erupted in shocked whispers. Vivian, who had been sitting at her father's right hand in a dress cut to display her considerable assets, shot to her feet. "Your Majesty, surely you cannot be serious. She is nobody, a servant. If you require companionship during your visit, I would be honored to attend you." The look Thorn gave Vivian could have frozen fire. "I did not ask for companionship, Lady Vivian. I gave an order regarding this woman's safety. Unless you believe yourself qualified to question a direct command from your king." Vivian's face flushed crimson, but she sat back down, her eyes promising murder when they flickered toward Kira. Alpha Marcus bowed, though his hands were clenched into fists at his sides. "Of course, Your Majesty. It will be done immediately." Kira found herself escorted from the hall by two of the king's personal guards, massive warriors who flanked her like she was either a precious treasure or a dangerous prisoner. They brought her not to the guest quarters, as announced, but to a private study adjacent to the king's own chambers, a room lined with books and maps and furnished with dark leather chairs. "Wait here," one of the guards instructed, before they both took positions outside the door. Kira stood in the center of the room, her mind reeling. This could not be happening. Kings did not notice servants. They did not sense things that should be hidden. They did not hear horns wrapped in iron chains and buried in locked chests. Unless he was not just any wolf. Unless his power ran deeper than she had imagined. Unless the horn was calling to him the same way. It called to her. The door opened and Thorn entered, closing it behind him with a soft click. In the confined space, his presence was even more intense, filling the room until Kira felt like she could not draw a full breath. He moved to a cabinet, poured 2 glasses of amber liquid, and held one out to her. "Drink. You look like you might faint." Kira took the glass with shaking hands but did not drink. Thorn settled into one of the chairs, gesturing for her to sit across from him. When she perched on the edge of the seat, he studied her with those unsettling golden eyes. "Do you know what I am, Kira Ashwood?" "You are the Alpha King," she answered carefully, "the ruler of all packs in the kingdom. That is my title. But do you know what I am?" He took a sip of his drink, never breaking eye contact. "I am a trueborn. My bloodline reaches back to the first wolves, the original children of the moon goddess herself. And one of the gifts of my blood is that I can hear the old magic. The ancient calls. The songs of power that most modern wolves have forgotten even existed." Kira's fingers tightened around her glass. "I still do not understand why you have brought me here, Your Majesty." Thorn leaned forward, his elbows on his knees. "Yes, you do. You understand perfectly. Because you heard it too. The moment I crossed into Silvermoon territory, something called to me. Something old and powerful and bound in iron. And it was not just calling. It was screaming your name." The glass slipped from Kira's fingers, hitting the carpet and spilling whiskey across the dark fibers. She could not deny it anymore. Could not hide behind practiced lies. He knew. Somehow, impossibly he knew. "The horn," she whispered. Thorn nodded slowly. "The horn. And not just any horn. I would know that call anywhere. It is a moonshadow relic. A piece of the royal house that was destroyed 25 years ago in the Purge Wars. If you are enjoying this story, do not forget to leave a like. And subscribe to the channel for more emotional stories like this one." Kira felt the blood drain from her face. The Purge Wars. She knew the history. Everyone did. The Moonshadow dynasty had been the second most powerful house in the kingdom, rivals to the Blackwood line for centuries. When old King Darius, Thorn's father, had discovered evidence of a Moonshadow plot to overthrow him, he had responded with absolute brutality. The entire Moonshadow pack had been slaughtered, their lands burned, their name erased from official records. It had been a message written in blood, a demonstration of what happened to those who threatened Blackwood rule. No one had survived. At least, that was what history claimed. "You think I am Moonshadow," Kira said, her voice hollow. "That is impossible. They are all dead." Thorn rose and crossed to a bookshelf, pulling down a leather-bound volume. He opened it to a marked page and held it out to her. The illustration showed a ceremonial horn, ornate and beautiful, wrapped in silver chains. "This is the Moonshadow horn of summoning. It was used by the Moonshadow Luna to call her pack to war or celebration, to bind oaths and witness matings. It was said to respond only to those of direct royal blood. When the Moonshadows fell, the horn vanished. Most assumed it had been destroyed or hidden so deep it would never be found." He closed the book. "But here you are, and the horn is calling to you." "My mother?" Kira breathed. "She must have taken it. She must have been the one who hid it." "Who was your mother, Kira?" Thorn's voice had gentled, but his eyes were sharp. "What was her name?" "I do not know." The admission hurt, a wound that had never fully healed. "She never told anyone. She arrived at Silvermoon pregnant and alone, gave birth to me, and stayed for 3 years. Then one night she walked into the forest and never came back. They searched for her body, but they never found anything. The elders said she probably fell prey to rogues or wild animals." Thorn was quiet for a long moment, his expression unreadable. "Did she leave you anything besides the horn?" "Nothing. Just a letter." Kira had not thought about that letter in years, had not dared to read it since she was a child. "It is in the chest with the horn. She wrote it for me to read when I was older, but I never understood it. Just warnings to keep the horn hidden, to never trust anyone with the truth, to protect myself above all else." "I need to see it," Thorn said. "The horn and the letter, both." Panic flared in Kira's chest. "I cannot. If I bring it out, if anyone sees it, they will kill me. The elders made that very clear. Whatever my mother was involved in, whatever bloodline I might carry, it is dangerous. Deadly. They wanted it buried and forgotten." Thorn moved closer, and this time, when he reached out, his hand cupped her chin, tilting her face up to meet his eyes. His touch sent electricity racing across her skin, and somewhere deep. Inside, her dormant wolf stirred for the first time in her life. "Kira Ashwood, if you are who I think you are, then you are in far more danger than you know. The Purge Wars never truly ended. There are wolves in this kingdom who would see any Moonshadow blood wiped from existence. And there are others who would use you as a weapon against my throne." His thumb brushed across her cheekbone, the gesture surprisingly tender. "But you are under my protection now, and I swear to you on my bloodline and my crown that I will not let anyone harm you. Not while I draw breath." Kira wanted to believe him, wanted to trust the sincerity in those golden eyes, the strength in his touch. But she had learned long ago that trust was a luxury she could not afford. "Why?" she asked. "Why do you care what happens to a kitchen servant? Even if I do carry Moonshadow blood, what does that matter to you?" Something flickered across Thorn's face, an emotion too complex to name. His hand dropped from her face, but he did not step back. "Because the moment I crossed into this territory and heard that horn calling, my wolf recognized it. Recognized you. And there is only one reason a true-born wolf responds to another wolf with that kind of certainty." Kira's heart stopped. "No, it could not be. You cannot be suggesting what I think you are suggesting." Thorn's smile was slight and pained. "I am not suggesting anything. I am telling you a truth that I do not fully understand myself. You are my mate, Kira. The horn did not just call to me because of what it is. It called because it recognized what you are to me, what we are to each other." The room spun. Kira gripped the arms of the chair to keep from falling, her mind refusing to process what she had just heard. Mates. The sacred bond, the gift of the moon goddess, the connection that transcended pack politics and social hierarchies. It was supposed to be rare, precious, something that happened maybe once in a generation. And it was supposed to bring joy. But all Kira felt was terror, because she was nobody. She had no family, no status, no power. She had spent her entire life being invisible, and now the most powerful wolf in the kingdom was claiming her as his mate. It was impossible. It was a death sentence. "I need to go," she whispered, standing on unsteady legs. "I need to think. I cannot do this. I cannot be what you are saying I am." Thorn caught her wrist gently. "I know this is overwhelming. I know you have no reason to trust me, but I need you to listen very carefully. Tomorrow morning, I want you to bring me the horn and the letter. I will have my guards escort you. We will examine them together, and then we will decide what to do next. Can you do that for me?" Kira pulled her wrist free, but she nodded. What choice did she have? Running would only make her look guilty of something, and refusing the Alpha King was not an option. "I will bring them." "Good." Thorn moved to the door, opening it and gesturing to his guards. "Escort Miss Ashwood to the East Wing guest quarters. Post sentries. No one enters or leaves without my express permission." As Kira was led away, she glanced back to find Thorn still standing in the doorway, his eyes tracking her movements with an intensity that made her wolf whimper inside her chest. For the first time in her life, Kira felt seen. Truly, completely seen. And it was the most terrifying thing she had ever experienced. The guest quarters were more luxurious than anywhere Kira had ever slept. The bed was massive, piled with soft furs and silk pillows. A fire crackled in the marble fireplace. Fresh flowers sat on the dresser next to a basin of warm water and fine soaps. It was a room fit for someone important, someone worthy. Kira sat on the edge of the bed and buried her face in her hands. Her entire world had shattered in the space of a single evening. The Alpha King claimed she was his mate. He believed she carried Moonshadow blood. He wanted to see the horn that had been her secret shame for as long as she could remember. And somewhere deep inside her chest, her wolf was waking up, stretching and testing the boundaries of the cage that had held it silent for 22 years. She needed to retrieve the horn before morning, needed to face whatever truth it held. But as she lay back on the impossibly soft bed, exhaustion dragging her towards sleep, one thought circled through her mind on an endless loop. If Thorn was right, if she really was the last Moonshadow, then everyone who had died in the Purge Wars had died because of her bloodline. And there were wolves in this kingdom who would gladly finish what King Darius had started. Kira woke to shouting. She bolted upright, her heart pounding as heavy footsteps thundered past her door. Through the window, she could see the sky lightening with the first hints of dawn, the darkness giving way to pale gray. She had slept for hours, falling into unconsciousness despite her racing thoughts. The shouting intensified, and Kira recognized Alpha Marcus's voice, sharp with anger and fear. She crept to the door, pressing her ear against the wood. The guards outside were speaking in low, urgent tones. Something had happened. Something bad. The door opened without warning, and Kira stumbled back as one of Thorn's guards entered. His face was grim. "Miss Ashwood, I need you to come with me. There has been an incident." Kira's blood turned to ice. "What kind of incident?" "Your room, the one you slept in before. Someone broke in during the night and destroyed it. Everything has been torn apart. We need to know if anything was taken." The walk through the pack house felt like moving through a nightmare. Wolves lined the corridors, their expressions ranging from curious to hostile, and the whispers followed Kira like a physical presence. When they reached the servants' quarters, she found Alpha Marcus and Thorn standing outside her former room, their body language aggressive, tension crackling in the air between them. The door hung off its hinges. Through the opening, Kira could see chaos. Her mattress had been shredded, the stuffing scattered across the floor like snow. Her few possessions had been smashed or torn, and in the center of the destruction, the wooden chest that had held the horn lay in pieces, the lock broken, the lid splintered. The chest was empty. "No," Kira breathed, pushing past the guards and dropping to her knees amid the wreckage. She dug through the blankets, the broken wood, searching desperately for the familiar weight of iron-wrapped horn. No, no, no. But it was gone. The horn, the letter, everything her mother had left her. Stolen. Who knew about the horn? Thorne's voice cut through her panic. He stood in the doorway, his presence filling the small space. Kira looked up at him, tears streaming down her face. The elders. A few of them knew my mother left me something, but they never saw it directly. They just told me to keep it hidden. And last night, after our conversation, did you tell anyone what we discussed? No, I spoke to no one. I came straight to the guest quarters and slept. Thorne's jaw tightened. He turned to Alpha Marcus, who was hovering nervously in the corridor. Seal the borders. No one enters or leaves Silvermoon territory until that artifact is found. And I want every member of your pack questioned. Someone did this, and they will answer for it. Alpha Marcus bowed, but his eyes were hard. Of course, Your Majesty, though I must say, this entire situation is highly irregular. One cannot help but wonder if this young woman has been entirely truthful about her circumstances. The accusation hung in the air like poison. Kira pushed to her feet, her hands clenched at her sides. I have told the truth. Someone broke into my room and took the only thing of value I owned. Why would I destroy my own belongings? Perhaps to gain the king's sympathy, a new voice suggested. Vivian stepped into view, her expression perfectly concerned, perfectly innocent. Or perhaps there never was a horn at all. Perhaps this is all an elaborate scheme to attract royal attention. Thorne moved with speed that shocked everyone. One moment he was standing near the door. The next he had Vivian pressed against the corridor wall, his hand around her throat, his eyes blazing gold. You will not speak about my mate with such disrespect. You will not question her integrity. And if I discover that you had anything to do with this theft, I will have you executed for treason against the crown. Do you understand me? Vivian gasped, her eyes wide with shock and fear. Alpha Marcus made a strangled sound of protest, but did not dare intervene. I understand, Vivian choked out. Thorne released her and she sagged against the wall, coughing. Your mate? Alpha Marcus's voice was faint. You claimed her? I have recognized her as my mate. The formal claiming will occur when I choose, not before. Thorne turned back to Kira, his expression softening when he saw her pale, shocked face. Come, we need to talk. Privately. He led her through the pack house to a small garden behind the main building, a space secluded by high hedges and morning mist. The moment they were alone, Thorne cupped her face in both hands, his thumbs wiping away the tears that continued to fall. Breathe, Kira. Just breathe. It is gone, she whispered. The only connection I had to my mother, to whatever I am, and it is gone. How am I supposed to prove anything now? We will find it, Thorne promised. Whoever took it cannot have gone far. The horn is bound to you by blood. If we search, you should be able to sense it, to feel where it is. Kira shook her head. I have never been able to sense it before. I could hear it sometimes in dreams, but I never knew how to control it. I do not know how to call it back. Thorne's hands slid down to her shoulders, his grip firm and grounding. Then we need to wake your wolf, fully, completely, because your wolf will know how to find what belongs to you. My wolf has been silent my entire life. I have tried everything. Meditation, ritual, even pain. Nothing works. That is because your wolf was waiting, Thorne said quietly. waiting for the right trigger, the right moment, the right bond. He leaned closer, his forehead touching hers, and Kira felt the mate bond flare to life between them, a golden thread of connection that pulsed with power. Let me help you. Let me in. Trust me enough to let me guide your wolf to the surface. Kira's breath hitched. Every instinct screamed at her that this was dangerous, that opening herself to someone else would only lead to pain. But what choice did she have? The horn was gone. Her mother's letter was gone. And without them, she had no proof of who she was, no way to understand the power that clearly ran in her blood. What do you think will happen next? Leave your predictions in the comments below. What do I need to do? She asked. Thorn smiled, and it transformed his face, turning the hard warrior into something almost gentle. Close your eyes. Focus on my voice. Feel the bond between us, the pull that brought me to you across miles of territory. Follow that thread down into the place where your wolf is sleeping. Kira closed her eyes. At first, all she felt was her own heartbeat, the warmth of Thorn's hands on her shoulders, the cool morning air on her skin. But then she sensed it, the golden thread he had mentioned, humming with life and power. She followed it inward, down through layers of fear and doubt and pain, down to a place she had avoided her entire life. And there, curled in the darkness, was her wolf. It was not the small, weak creature she had always imagined. It was massive, silver white and gleaming, with eyes that burned the same gold as Thorn's. It was beautiful. It was terrifying. It was her. Hello, she whispered into the darkness. The wolf's head lifted, and Kira felt recognition pulse through the bond. This was not a separate entity. It was her, the part of her that had been locked away and silenced and denied for so long. The wolf rose to its feet, and power rolled off it in waves. That is it. Thorn's voice filtered through the darkness, warm and encouraging. Do not be afraid. Let it rise. Let it come forward. The wolf howled, and the sound echoed through Kira's entire being. She gasped, her eyes flying open as energy surged through her body. Her skin prickled, her bones ached, and for the first time in her life, she felt her body respond to the call of the shift. Thorn, she gasped. It hurts. It burns. I know. The first shift is always painful, but you can do this. I am right here. He stepped back, giving her space. Let it happen. Do not fight it. Kira cried out as her spine arched, as her bones began to reshape and reform. The pain was excruciating, worse than anything she ever experienced, but beneath it was something else. Freedom. Power. Truth. Her vision sharpened, colors becoming more vivid. Her hearing expanded, picking up the heartbeats of wolves throughout the pack house, the rustle of leaves in the garden, the breathing of the man watching her with fierce pride in his eyes. Her muscles elongated, her hands reshaping into paws tipped with silver claws. And then she was standing on 4 legs instead of 2, her body covered in silver-white fur that seemed to glow in the morning light. Thorn knelt before her, his eyes bright with emotion. There you are, he said softly. There is my beautiful, powerful mate. He held out his hand, and Kira pressed her wolf's head into his palm, feeling the rightness of the contact, the way her wolf settled and purred under his touch. Now, Thorn continued, his voice taking on a note of command. Find the horn. Reach out with your senses and find what belongs to you. Kira closed her wolf's eyes and reached out, extending her awareness beyond the garden, beyond the pack house. At first, there was nothing. But then she felt it. A faint pulse of recognition, distant, but growing stronger. The horn. It was moving, being carried away from Silver Moon territory toward the eastern border. And with that awareness came rage. Someone had stolen from her. Someone had violated her space, her privacy, her history, and her wolf would not tolerate it. Kira threw back her head and howled, the sound ripping through the morning air with enough force that windows rattled in the pack house. It was a sound of fury and claim and warning. And somewhere in the distance, the horn answered. Its call rang out clear and true, a note of ancient power that every wolf within miles would hear. Thorn shifted beside her, his massive black wolf appearing in a blur of shadow and muscle. He pressed his shoulder against hers, lending strength and support. Together, they ran. They crashed through the pack house, wolves scattering before them, and burst into the forest beyond. Kira had never run like this, had never felt the pure joy of 4 legs eating up ground, of wind in her fur, of power coiling in her muscles. Thorn kept pace beside her, guiding her through the trees, correcting her path when she veered off course. The bond between them sang, feeding her information, sharing his strength. They were not just running together. They were hunting together, and their prey was close. The eastern border came into view, marked by ancient standing stones covered in moss. Beyond it lay neutral territory, the wild lands where no pack claimed dominion. And standing at the border, a satchel clutched to her chest, was Vivian. She had shifted to her human form, probably to cross the border more easily with the stolen artifact, and her face went white with terror when she saw the 2 massive wolves bearing down on her. "Stop!" she screamed, stumbling backward. "You cannot cross the border in wolf form without violating the treaties. You cannot touch me in neutral territory." Thorn shifted mid-stride, his human form appearing as gracefully as his wolf had moved. He was naked, unconcerned with modesty, every inch of him radiating lethal intent. "You stole a royal artifact, Vivian. You violated the sanctity of the Alpha King's mate. Those crimes supersede any treaty." Vivian clutched the satchel tighter. "She is not royal. She is nobody. The moon shadows are dead. They deserve to die. They were traitors and conspirators, and my family suffered when they were purged. My grandfather lost everything fighting against them. This horn is a symbol of their treachery, and it should be destroyed." Kira shifted as well, her transformation smoother now that her wolf had been awakened. She stood beside Thorn, naked and furious, and no longer afraid. "Give me the horn, now." "Or what?" Vivian laughed, the sound brittle and slightly unhinged. "You will have me executed? Your mate does not have that kind of power. She is nothing but a kitchen servant who got lucky." Thorn took a step forward, and the temperature seemed to drop 10 degrees. "Kira Ashwood is my mate. That makes her queen in all but ceremony. And if you do not return what you stole in the next 10 seconds, I will show you exactly what power she wields through me." Vivian's eyes darted between them, calculating, desperate. Then her expression hardened. "If I cannot have you, then no one will, especially not some moon shadow." "Whore!" She threw the satchel to the ground and brought her foot down on it, hard. But before her boot could connect with the iron-wrapped horn inside, Kira moved. She had no idea she could move that fast, but suddenly she was there, her hand catching Vivian's leg mid-strike, her strength far greater than it should have been. She twisted, and Vivian screamed as she was thrown backward, landing hard on the packed earth. If you want to see how this story ends, make sure you are subscribed with notifications on. Kira knelt and opened the satchel with shaking hands. The horn was there, wrapped in its chains, but as her fingers touched the iron, something changed. The metal did not burn. Instead, it warmed, responding to her touch, recognizing her blood. The chains began to glow, softly at first, then brighter, until they shone like captured moonlight. "Step back," Thorn said quietly, his hand on her shoulder. "Let it happen." Kira lifted the horn from the satchel, and the chains fell. Away, disintegrating into silver dust that blew away on the morning breeze. Freed, The horn was magnificent. It was carved from some kind of bone or horn, ivory white, and etched with intricate designs that seemed to move and shift in the light. And it sang. Not with sound, but with power, a vibration that resonated through Kira's entire being. She raised it to her lips and blew. The note that emerged was like nothing that had ever been heard in the modern age. It was the sound of ancient forests and silver moonlight, of wolves running beneath a full moon, of power and majesty and bloodlines that stretched back to the very beginning. Every wolf within 100 miles heard it and fell to their knees, their wolves bowing to a call they did not fully understand, but could not deny. And in Kira's mind, images flooded forth, memories that were not her own. A woman with silver hair and gold eyes, standing on a cliff overlooking a vast territory. The moon shadow Luna, ruling with wisdom and strength. The same woman, pregnant and running through a forest, blood on her clothes, terror in her eyes. She was carrying the horn, protecting it, hiding it. She reached a small pack on the border of the kingdom, left her infant daughter in their care, and vanished into the trees. But before she left, she wove a spell into the horn, binding it to her daughter's blood, ensuring that it would only answer to the true moon shadow heir. Kira lowered the horn, tears streaming down her face. She was the Luna, she whispered. My mother was Helena Moonshadow, the last Luna of the royal house. Thorn drew her into his arms, his embrace strong and protective. Then you are Princess Kira Moonshadow, the rightful heir to one of the oldest bloodlines in our history. Around them, wolves began to emerge from the forest. The Silver Moon pack, drawn by the horn's call, stood in a semicircle with Alpha Marcus at their head. His face was ashen, his eyes fixed on Kira with a mixture of shock and fear. You knew, Kira said, her voice hard. The elders knew what she was. They knew who I was, and they kept me locked in a basement, working in kitchens, treated like refuse. Marcus fell to his knees. We were protecting you. After the purge, anyone with Moonshadow blood was hunted. Your mother begged us to keep you hidden, to keep you safe. We thought if you never knew, if you never awakened, you could live a normal life. You thought wrong, Thorn said coldly. You denied her her birthright, her heritage, her power. And in doing so, you violated the most sacred duty any pack can have, which is to protect and nurture all its members. He looked at the assembled wolves, his authority absolute. By the power vested in me as Alpha King, I am dissolving the Silver Moon Pack's autonomy. You will be placed under direct royal supervision until I am satisfied that proper leadership can be established. Alpha Marcus opened his mouth to protest, but one look from Thorn silenced him. As for Vivian Silvermoon, Thorn continued, his gaze falling on the woman who still lay sprawled on the ground. You are hereby charged with theft of a royal artifact, assault on the Queen-to-be, and conspiracy to destroy evidence of a surviving royal bloodline. You will be taken to the capital and tried before the High Court. Guards appeared, wolves from Thorn's personal retinue, and dragged Vivian away. She did not scream or fight. She simply stared at Kira with pure hatred burning in her eyes. When they were gone, Thorn turned to Kira and took her hands in his. I know this is overwhelming. I know your entire world has been turned upside down. But I need you to understand something. The mate bond that brought us together was not an accident. The moon goddess knew exactly what she was doing when she tied your soul to mine. He dropped to one knee, and the assembled wolves gasped. An Alpha King did not kneel. Not for anyone. But Thorn knelt before Kira, his hands still holding hers, his golden eyes full of certainty and something that looked dangerously like love. Kira Moonshadow, last of your bloodline and heir to a legacy of power and grace, I am asking you to be my queen. Not because politics demand it, not because bloodlines require it, but because you are my mate, and I cannot imagine ruling this kingdom without you by my side. Will you accept me? Will you claim me as I claim you?" Kira looked down at the man kneeling before her, the most powerful wolf in the kingdom, offering her everything she had never dared to dream of: safety, protection, love, a place to belong. But more than that, he was offering her the truth of who she was. And standing there, naked and holding the horn that had called across generations, Kira finally understood what her mother had been trying to tell her all those years ago. She was not meant to hide. She was not meant to be invisible. She was meant to rise. "Yes," she said, her voice strong and clear. "I accept you, Thorn Blackwood. I claim you as my mate, my king, my partner, and I will stand beside you as your queen." Thorn surged to his feet and pulled her into a kiss that was both tender and claiming, a promise and a vow. Around them, the assembled wolves howled their approval, the sound echoing through the forest and across the kingdom. The formal mating ceremony took place 3 days later in the capital, in the ancient temple where kings and queens had been bound together for 1,000 years. Kira wore a gown of silver and white, her hair unbound and flowing down her back, the moonshadow horn mounted on a stand beside the altar as a symbol of her heritage. Thorn stood waiting for her in ceremonial armor, his eyes never leaving her face as she walked down the aisle. The high priestess performed the ritual, binding their wrists with silver cord, anointing their foreheads with blessed oils, and speaking the ancient words that would join them, not just as mates, but as king and queen. When it came time for the vows, Thorn took Kira's hands and spoke words that had not been planned, that came straight from his heart. "I vow to protect you with my life and my crown. I vow to honor the bloodline you carry and the power you wield. I vow to never let you feel invisible or worthless or alone ever again. You are my mate, my queen, my everything, and I will love you until the stars fall from the sky." Kira's voice was steady when she replied, "I vow to stand beside you in strength and in vulnerability. I vow to honor the trust you have placed in me and the kingdom we will build together. I vow to embrace the power I was born with and use it to protect those who cannot protect themselves. You are my mate, my king, my heart, and I will love you beyond this life and into whatever comes after." The high priestess smiled and raised her hands. "By the power of the moon goddess and the authority vested in me, I pronounce you bound in mate and crown. May your rule be long and your love eternal." The temple erupted in celebration. Wolves from every pack in the kingdom had come to witness the ceremony, and they howled and cheered as Thorn pulled Kira into another kiss, this one deeper and more possessive, a claiming witnessed by all. That night, in the royal chambers, Thorn made love to Kira with a reverence that brought tears to her eyes. He worshipped every inch of her skin, whispered praise against her throat, her breasts, her thighs. And when he finally claimed her fully, when their bodies joined and the mate bond snapped into place with a force that shook them both, Kira's wolf howled in triumph and completion. They lay tangled together afterward, skin damp with sweat, hearts beating in synchrony. Thorn traced patterns on Kira's shoulder, his touch gentle. "What are you thinking?" he asked. Kira smiled. "I am thinking that a year ago I was sleeping in a closet and scrubbing pots, and now I am a queen." "Not just a queen," Thorn corrected. "My queen, my mate, the other half of my soul." He kissed her temple. "And you are going to be magnificent." Kira turned in his arms, looking up at him. "What will we do about the Moonshadow legacy? About the truth of what happened during the purge?" Thorn's expression grew serious. "We are going to investigate. My father is dead, but there are others who were involved in those decisions. And if I discover that the Moonshadows were falsely accused, if the evidence of treason was manufactured, then we will set the record straight. Your family deserves justice, and you deserve the truth. Kira felt something loosen in her chest, a knot of pain and confusion that had been there for as long as she could remember. Thank you. You never have to thank me for doing what is right, Thorn said. He pulled her closer, his arms protective and sure. Now sleep, my love. Tomorrow we begin rebuilding your legacy. But tonight, you are simply mine. The months that followed were a whirlwind of change and discovery. Kira learned to rule, sitting beside Thorn in court, listening to petitions, making decisions that affected thousands of lives. She was nervous at first, afraid of making mistakes, but Thorn was patient, guiding her, teaching her, and slowly she found her confidence. The investigation into the Purge Wars revealed truths that shook the kingdom. King Darius had not discovered evidence of a Moonshadow plot. He had manufactured it, planting false documents and bribing witnesses because he had been threatened by the Moonshadow Luna's growing influence and popularity. The Purge had not been justice. It had been murder. Political assassination on a massive scale. Thorn made a public declaration, clearing the Moonshadow name and acknowledging the crimes committed against them. He established a monument to honor the fallen, and he gave Kira control of the Moonshadow ancestral lands, territories that had been seized by the crown and left to go wild. Kira stood on the cliff where her mother had once stood, looking out over the land that was now hers by birthright. The horn rested in her hands, no longer wrapped in chains, no longer hidden. I wish you could see this, she whispered, knowing somehow that her mother's spirit lingered in this place. I wish you could know that I survived, that I found my way, that the legacy you protected lives on. A breeze stirred her hair, carrying the scent of pine and wildflowers, and Kira felt a warmth settle over her shoulders like an embrace. Her mother was gone, but she was not forgotten, and Kira would make sure that the Moonshadow name was never forgotten again. Thorn came to stand beside her, his hand finding hers. Are you ready? He asked. Kira nodded. They were going to rebuild. They were going to create a pack on these lands, a sanctuary for wolves who had been marginalized or forgotten or cast aside. A place where no one would ever have to feel invisible again. If this story touched your heart, share it with someone who loves epic romance. Tell me in the comments, did you see this ending coming? I am ready, Kira said, squeezing Thorn's hand. Together they raised the horn, and together they blew a call that rang out across the mountains and valleys, a summons to all wolves who sought a new beginning, a fresh start, a place to belong. And they came. Slowly at first, then in greater numbers. Wolves without packs. Wolves who had been rejected or exiled. Wolves who had heard the stories of the Queen. Who had risen from nothing and wanted to be part of what she was building. The Moonshadow Pack was reborn, and at its head stood Kira, no longer a servant, no longer invisible, but a queen in her own right, powerful and proud, and finally, completely, home.